My brothers and sisters, we have this very beautiful story today of Jesus' encounter with a man who has leprosy. We see in this gospel today the healing touch and the healing love of Christ. This is one of the first recorded healings that Jesus seems to have performed. And who does he heal? A leper. It's interesting because at Jesus' time, lepers were considered untouchable. Leprosy, as we all know, is a terrible, terrible disease. Especially in Jesus' time, if untreated, those who had leprosy expected to live only a few years. It started with a feeling of fatigue and pain in the joints. Scaly spots develop on the skin, and the body becomes covered with lumps. The face sometimes even changes its shape so that the sufferer sometimes can not even be recognized as a human face. Growth develops on the vocal cords so that the leper's voice becomes raspy. The body begins to decompose, and the leper develops a terrible stench. As you can imagine from what I have just said, nobody really wants to touch or be near the leper. But even worse than the isolation from being touched, leprosy deprives the victim of being able to feel what they touch. The disease attacks the nervous system, comprising the body's ability to feel pain. The leper might step on a stone or a thorn and injure his foot, but he's totally unaware that there's a problem. Infection sets in, and eventually the injured foot sometimes even falls off. I was just in San Jose, California, giving a retreat to a family group. And while I was there, I visited a church of St. Francis of Assisi. And out in front of the church is this beautiful statue of St. Francis of Assisi taking hold of a leper. And on the leper's cloak, there was a bell. And it just thought to me that bell was a reminder of the problems lepers had. The bell was there that when he walked, the leper's bell would ring so that people would be warned to stay away. They were forbidden to enter the temple in Jesus' time. They were forbidden to have contact with their loved ones, commanded to shout unclean whenever they came into contact with other people. They were not touched, or they could not touch anyone. But here is this account of Jesus encountering a leper. And what does he do? Instead of running away like most people, he draws close to the leper. He walks over to the leper, and he brings him first the warmth of his touch. Matthew chapter 11 tells us that when John the Baptist was in prison and heard about Jesus' ministry, he sent word by some of his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?" And Jesus answered him and said, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk. Lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up, and the poor have the good news preached to them." In other words, if you want to know if I'm the one who has come, who was to come, then pay attention to who I've healed. The people Jesus healed were his calling card, and the most prominent healing Jesus could possibly have done. in a sense, was maybe to heal a leper. And the real story is that he not only just healed him, because Jesus had many healings where he didn't, well, Jesus touched him. Jesus brought the healing touch of love. Not just that he was healed of his leprosy, but he was one who became lovable. And that was the great gift in this moment. Pope Francis, only a few months ago, won the admiration for his followers for his common touch and his accessibility. A few months ago, there was a man covered with lumps and boils who entered into St. Peter's Square. St. Francis went out to him and he touched him and he held on to him. And the news media made a big deal about it because Francis was showing the love of Christ, who comes to those who are most sick and most in need. If we are to be followers of Christ, we must have this same love, this same ability to reach out to the poorest and the sickest among us, to show the love of Christ in all that we do.